Okay, Woog, don't make this video about David Benavidez. What's good? It's Woog. We've got Canelo Alvarez, 60 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws, defending his WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO Super-Middleweight titles against Jaime Munguia, 43 wins and 0 losses. This is one of the more scrutinized matchups of the year. And it's not that it's a bad fight. And like I said at the top, I'm not going to make this video about David Benavidez and the fact that Canelo, if we're talking meritocracy, should be defending his titles against Benavidez. But there's no way to tell the story of the matchmaking behind Canelo versus Munguia without at least mentioning David Benavidez. So Canelo Alvarez has made it clear he's got no real interest in fighting David Benavidez. And I've already made a good amount of content on my frustrations with this saga as it stands. But, you know, Canelo went through the whole rigmarole. He even left PBC for some time just to try to negotiate elsewhere, see what else was on the table, after PBC reportedly made it clear that they weren't interested in paying Canelo what he wanted to get paid to fight Jermall Charlo, especially on the heels of Jermall Charlo's lackluster performance against Canelo, which is kind of messed up because it was Jermall who had the reputation of daring to be great. He was the one who became undisputed at 154. It's just very unfortunate that at this stage, it's this performance against Canelo that has recently defined or redefined Jermall Charlo. Like, that fight between Canelo and Jermall was so bad that it ruined Jermall's opportunity to fight Canelo. Not that Jermall was doing himself any favors. I mean, he was out of the ring for over 2.5 years and somehow was still allowed to hold on to that 160-pound title, the WBC middleweight belt. But I was just wondering, why is Canelo so hell-bent at this stage on fighting both Charlos? Like the Jermall Charlo fight was one that we wanted back in like 2016, 2017, all the way up to 2020, 2021, up until the Jermall Charlo Sergey Derevianchenko fight, basically. And we never got that fight. And now with this inactive Jermall Charlo, who's been out of the ring for 2.5 years, showed a lackluster comeback performance. Although he won against Jose Benavidez Jr., didn't look great, didn't look anywhere near his prime self. And that's the Jermall Charlo that Canelo wants to fight at this stage. I mean, he wanted to fight Jermall Charlo before Jermall Charlo had that comeback fight. So Jermall's comeback fight would have been against Canelo Alvarez if Jermall didn't pull out of the fight and then allow Jermall Charlo to step in and take that fight, coming all the way from 154 up to 168. So Canelo, after just kind of thinking of what the options were on the table, landed on fighting a Mexican opponent, which he said at a point that he did not want to do. So he's also doing this kind of cross promotionally because with Jaime Munguia being the opponent, that means that Oscar De La Hoya is involved. So Canelo is not only doing something cross promotionally, but he's fighting a fellow Mexican, a fellow countryman. And to so many fight fans, it just makes it look like Canelo will do anything to avoid fighting David Benavidez. That's what the appearance is. And that, if you listen to Canelo in his interviews, it sounds like it's not far from the truth. Canelo's talking about David Benavidez is going to come in with like 20 extra pounds. Well, you know, Canelo just did an interview with Dan Rayfield. Dan Rayfield asked a follow-up question. Well, you have fought light heavyweights, so why is David Benavidez different? And then Canelo kind of made a circular argument. It really wasn't further elaborating on why Jaime Munguia, in Canelo's eyes, is more deserving of this opportunity than David Benavidez is. But the fight that we have and that we have to look at now is Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia. And, you know, if there was no Benavidez in the division, this wouldn't be a terrible fight. It isn't a bad fight as it stands. It's just that, hey, no, that's the boogeyman over there. He's a former 2-time belt holder, undefeated. He's coming off of beating Caleb Plant and stopping Demetrius Andrade. Oh, what would Canelo do against that guy? That's the intrigue. That is the core of the frustration among much of the boxing community. And anybody who defends Canelo's choice not to fight David Benavidez, they are making excuses, non-rational excuses for Canelo. And if his argument, which it kind of is his argument, I've already fought the guys that people want me to fight, which you could dive deeper into that and analyze fight over fight how good of matchups these were. And the way that you could tell how good a matchup is going into the fight, look at the betting odds. If somebody wants to say, well, he fought that guy, well, what were the betting odds going in? Was Canelo a 5-1 favorite going in? Because if he was, then that wasn't a super competitive matchup on paper, even if the opponent had a credible name. Not to say that Canelo hasn't taken big challenges. He fought, he was the underdog going into the first and I believe second fight against Triple G. You know what I mean? So, and he fought brilliantly in those fights. I didn't agree that it was a draw and then a Canelo win, but he fought super well, very even, competitive fights. Canelo didn't hit the canvas once. So look, incredible, right? And he fought Erislandy Lara, although there were some weight shenanigans in that fight. But he also fought a lot of other great fights. He fought Floyd Mayweather. He fought Dimitri Bivol years later. And fight fans might not remember this, but Canelo was actually a big betting favorite going into that Dimitri Bivol fight, which might sound a little bit ridiculous right now, just knowing what we know and having had that fight play out. But again, when you want to talk about a fighter taking risks, you have to look at what the betting odds say, because if you know better than the casino and no, fighter A should be a big favorite, or no, this is an even matchup, well, then you should be making money against the casino if you know better than the casino. But they usually have these things priced out pretty well. But going into Canelo versus Bivol, Canelo was the betting favorite. It just didn't work out that way once they started fighting. And I think that another reason why there's so much frustration over this Canelo versus Munguia matchup is because if you look at Canelo's last 3 fights since he lost to Dimitri Bivol, it was the trilogy fight against Triple G, a damn near 40-year-old Triple G, and then it was against John Ryder and then Jermell Charlo. Again, undisputed champion coming up 2 divisions from 154. Now, there was at least some intrigue in that Jermell Charlo fight. Wasn't a lot of intrigue in the John Ryder fight. We kind of looked at that as being, okay, this is for some reason one of Canelo's mandatories. John Ryder was coming off that controversial decision win against Daniel Jacobs and the early stoppage due to an injury win over Zach Parker. But it was like, Canelo, he just fought Dimitri Bivol. Before that, he, unified, became undisputed at 168 against Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant. So if anybody's deserving of a, kind of a lesser opponent relatively, it's Canelo, given his fight-by-fight schedule. But then, again, if you look at his 3 opponents since Bivol, 40-year-old Triple G, John Ryder, okay, and then Jermell Charlo, it's like, wait a minute, this is like 3 in a row where it's not ideal in terms of, who the public wants to see you fight. But Canelo says that he's done it all, so he gets to do what he wants. And yes, theoretically, because he's the money man, because he is the biggest commercial attraction in boxing, still the biggest commercial attraction in all of boxing, Canelo, yeah, he does get to call the shots. And now he's calling that shot against Jaime Munguia. So, I was thinking, since Canelo is a 5-1 favorite here, so let's be clear about that. What do you think the betting odds would be if Canelo were to have fought David Benavidez? Just putting that out there for anybody who wants to say, oh no, Munguia is a better opponent than Benavidez. What would the odds be? Would they be 5-1 in Canelo's favor? But because Canelo is a 5-1 favorite here, instead of just doing the typical breakdown that I normally would, I want to give first what I think Jaime Munguia would need to do to stand a chance at beating Canelo, to stand a real chance at winning this fight. What kind of a fight does Jaime Munguia need to fight to pull this off? And then I will give my prediction. But Jaime Munguia, again, 43-0. I mean, he had a very frustrating run at 160 after a pretty good run at 154. I mean, he is a super active fighter. That's why he's got that big record that he has, 43 wins. And that's because he fought like 7 times in 2017. That was the year before he fought Saddam Ali and took the 154 WBO title. But even after that 4th round TKO over Saddam Ali, he was back in the ring like 2 months later to fight Liam Smith. And in that year, 2018, he fought 5 times. So 7 times in 2017, 5 times in 2018, several times, in 2022, even though once he left 154, again, it was a very frustrating run with his opponents being Gary O'Sullivan, Turiano Johnson, Camille Zurameta, Gabriel Rosado, Demetrius Ballard, Jimmy Kelly. It was, right? It was like that. I mean, I could see sprinkling 1 or 2 of those guys in between better opponents, but when it's just a string of, BC level, and I know, Gabriel Rosado is a respectable fighter, but at that stage of his career, that just wasn't a fight that he was going to win. I mean, the reason he got that fight was because he unexpectedly knocked out Bec Bully before that. But yeah, frustrating opponent by opponent selection for Jaime Munguia at 160. Then he goes up to 168, and his second or third fight there was against Sergey Derevianchenko. So that was a major step up. It ended up being like one of the 2 fights of the year for 2023. And then he has that great performance, arguably one of the best of his career. I would say it's a top 2, top 3 performance of his career against John Ryder. And whereas Canelo beat John Ryder via decision, Munguia stopped John Ryder in the 9th round. Now, granted, John Ryder probably got banged up pretty good against Canelo. He got dropped in the fight, got his nose totally broken, and he took a beating in that one. Yes, he did persevere and make it the distance, even had some moments throughout the second half of the fight, but he took a pretty significant beat down, and I would be remiss not to mention that might have played a part in why or how John Ryder would be more breakable by the time he's fighting Jaime Munguia. Munguia knocked him down several times, started knocking him down like in the 2nd round. But for Munguia to have a shot at beating Canelo Alvarez, I feel like he's got to apply pressure, but it's got to be the right kind of pressure. I think he does need to get his jab going. Yes, he was pretty deliberate in his use of the jab against the southpaw John Ryder. And under the tutelage of Freddie Roach, I noticed Munguia was crouching lower than he normally does. He used to fight straight upright and just throw a lot of punches, 3 to 5 punch combinations. Again, look at the beating that he applies on Gabriel Rosado. But in this fight against Canelo, you can't go head over skis with your combinations. You'll end up James Kirklanding yourself. Go watch that Canelo versus Kirkland fight if you don't know what I mean. Kirkland came in hot, was hitting Canelo a lot in that 1st round. Canelo kind of weathered the storm, started like picking his spots and counterpunching Kirkland. Kirkland kept on coming forward, ended up getting his lights put out by Canelo Alvarez. You could get yourself hurt coming in recklessly against Canelo. So Munguia kind of has to thread the needle here. I think that in the first half of the fight, he's got to jab, but he's got to do things from distance. Don't start jabbing from too up close. That's how you get counterpunch, like Better Be of Counterpunch Joe Smith Jr. when you start jabbing from too close in. You also don't want to jab from too far away. So you've got to measure the range and the distance well. So Munguia, I think he's got to get busy with the jab. I feel like he's got to make Canelo work in the first half of the fight. Make those rounds close. Win a couple of those early rounds if you can. Do it with some volume, but again, don't go head over skis to where you are right there for Canelo's counterpunching opportunities. I am worried about Munguia instead doing one of 2 things. Either turning into Chavez Jr. when Canelo fought Chavez Jr., which I think that was one of the first videos I ever did. And I think I actually picked Chavez Jr. to upset Canelo Alvarez. I just thought that if Chavez Jr. was like the same Chavez Jr. that, captured the middleweight belt and stopped guys like Andy Lee, if that was the same Chavez Jr., I thought that he could do some things because they fought at a catch weight of like 164 at the time, which was really big for Canelo because he wasn't even really a middleweight at that point. So anyway, once they got into the ring, Chavez Jr. was kind of on his bike, but he wasn't just moving around the perimeter like Ryan Garcia does sometimes, like he did against Oscar Duarte. No, he was just kind of backing up and just kind of getting beaten from pillar to post with Canelo just walking him down, kind of pinning him to like this rope and then just working a couple punches. And then, Chavez Jr. would try to move to the other side of the ring. Canelo would kind of walk him down, beat him up, but it was a very listless performance, super uninspired performance from Chavez Jr., where it was clear he was only in there to survive and not to get hurt too badly. I'm wondering if Jaime Munguia, in these brightest of lights, shells up a little bit and is kind of overwhelmed by like looking at his idol. Like he is a big fan of Canelo. So I'm just wondering if once he sees Canelo in the ring announcements, like, damn, he's really here and he's really in front of me. And if he's too spooked by that to perform at his best and just says, hey, let me just get out of here without getting knocked out, I think that we might see a much less voluminous Jaime Munguia who's kind of covering up more and he's almost unrecognizable. Kind of the way that Jermell Charlo did it. Like, I don't even know this guy, right? I wouldn't be too surprised if Jaime Munguia is reduced to that. I hope that that's not the case, but it is a possibility where Canelo just wins a dominant decision victory. Another possibility is that Munguia opens up too much. He's going to treat Canelo like he tried to treat Gary Spike O'Sullivan or one of those opponents. Or look at the way that he came in at first against Derevianchenko. That ended up getting Munguia hurt badly. Like, Derevianchenko was a couple clean shots away from finishing that fight in the middle rounds. Again, if Munguia comes in throwing too many combinations, gets too excited, Canelo's going to put a hurting on him and might just get him out of there, like in the early to middle rounds, if Munguia isn't careful. So again, he's got to thread the needle, the right kind of volume, do it from distance where you are making Canelo work. You are opening up with combinations in the right opportunities, in the right moments, but don't just come in predictably throwing 2 punches, 3 punches, another 3 punches. Don't do that. Don't get into the pattern of letting your hands go again and again and again. Yes, that would lead to some good moments. Yes, you might get Canelo to say, whoa, damn, and let you just kind of let your hands go and just kind of nod his head and then start walking you down. But it's going to end up backfiring if you do that. So be deliberate. Give a nice, healthy dose of jabs. Change levels like you did against John Ryder. So stay low, jab, jab, move a little bit, let Canelo come to you a little bit and counterpunch Canelo. So change things up. Come forward a little bit, jab, jab, and every now and then a combination, enough to make the rounds very close to where the rounds could go either way. Try to win 2 of the first 4 rounds. Hell, if you could win 3 of the first 5 rounds, of course. Throw enough volume, if it's responsible volume, to maybe win 3 out of 5. But again, don't let this guy take your head off with some nasty counter punches. And I also wonder how Jaime Munguia is going to take Canelo's punches to the body, but mix it up a little bit. Be careful when you're going to Canelo's body, but go to his body a little bit. Jab to his body if you are so inclined. Again, come forward a little bit, but then take your foot off the gas. Back up a little bit. Make Canelo come to you. Move around the ring and go behind the jab and make Canelo have to use his legs to start coming in to try to demonstratively win the round, because you might have opened up a little bit in the first half of the round and now you're backing up because Canelo might feel like he's got to make up for that and needs to win the round. So throw those kinds of curveballs. Come in a little bit, then retreat a little bit. Make Canelo move his legs. Canelo, as it stands, and this goes back to early in Canelo's career, would take periods of rounds off. So do a lot of that through the first few rounds, but do all of that while keeping enough left in the tank to further put your foot on the gas in the second half of the fight. Yes, that does give Canelo more opportunities, but here's the thing. You want to make Canelo work enough in the first half of the fight to where he starts fading just a little bit, like he did in the trilogy fight against Triple G, like he did in that fight against John Ryder. You want Canelo to have to let his hands go a lot in the first half of the fight and to get his feet moving a lot in the first half of the fight, because that's where your youth might be able to come in. Yes, you might say, well, Canelo's got the late round veteran savvy. He's got the late round experience. It might bode well for him for this fight to go into the second half of the fight, but not if Jaime Munguia is still relatively fresh and bouncing on his toes in the way that he was still bouncing against John Ryder. Because if you start letting your hands go a little bit more to win those rounds throughout the second half of the fight, but then you still take your foot off the gas in moments to then make Canelo chase you and hunt you down, but don't turn into like Caleb Plant to where you're kind of like holding on in the second half of the fight, throwing jabs only and making it known that you are the hunted and not the hunter. No, you do a little bit of both. Like, Dimitri Bivol did. Granted, Jaime Munguia is not Dimitri Bivol. He doesn't have the fight IQ of Dimitri Bivol, but you could do some of the same things. You've got a pretty good reach. You are able to throw combinations. You don't have enough head movement, but you are starting to learn to change levels. And I did see Munguia slipping a lot of John Ryder's punches in that fight. So give him a measured, unpredictable attack. Again, keep the first half of the fight close. Start doing even more work in the second half of the fight. Because here's the thing. I don't think Munguia can stop Canelo Alvarez. As devastating a puncher as Munguia can be, and as much as he overwhelms a lot of his opponents, those other opponents are not Canelo Alvarez. Canelo has demonstrated one of the greatest chins we have seen in the modern era. Again, 24 rounds with prime Triple G or near prime Triple G, and then obviously 12 more rounds years later. But when is the last time you've seen Canelo Alvarez buckled? I know that people will point to his fight a long time ago against Miguel Cotto's brother. I think it was Jose Cotto. But yo, that was back in 2010. That's 14 years ago. That was on the Floyd Mayweather versus Shane Mosley undercard, I believe. Since then, when have you seen Canelo rocked, where he is legs buckling, jelly leg? Yes, Triple G hit him with some shots. Several shots throughout those first 2 fights, but you don't see Canelo get hit to the chin and then start to do any of that. No. And I don't think that Jaime Munguia is going to get that out of it. Look, if Jaime Munguia is able to get Canelo there, well, hell, like, I think that we're all going to be on the edge of our seats like, whoa, what is going on? Because Callum Smith wasn't able to do it. Sergey Kovalev wasn't able to do it. I've got a lot of respect for Canelo's durability, his chin. He ain't going nowhere, is how I see it in this fight against Munguia. So Munguia is going to have to make volume work for him. I know it seems like a bummer. Like if Jaime Munguia, who is a pressure fighter and kind of like a knockout artist, right? 34 of his 43 wins, 34 of 43 have come via knockout. So if knockout or TKO isn't really on the table, I know he's got a chance of doing it. He's Jaime Munguia and this is boxing. But if it's not likely that he's going to score a knockout, you better start focusing on winning those rounds. And I really think that measured, come forward, behind the jab, changing levels, looking for opportunity to let your hands go, being very wary and cautious of the return fire. But when Canelo returns fire, pour it on. So when Canelo gives you some volume, give him volume right back, because Canelo doesn't want to then have to keep on giving you volume. So you can win exchanges that way. But then again, after it heats up for those moments, peel back. Let Canelo come to you and fight that type of a fight through the first half of the fight. So then you get a more tired Canelo in the second half of the fight. You could start letting your hands go a little bit more. Maybe Canelo looks kind of worn out, disheveled, starts doing more of this. When you start seeing Canelo waving you in like he waved in Dimitri Bivol, like halfway through that fight, you know things aren't going Canelo's way. Try to get Canelo in that state in the second half of the fight. Now, do I think that he's going to do that? Can Jaime Munguia pull that type of a game plan off? By the way, if you would recommend another recipe for success, let me know in the comments how you think Munguia can win this fight. But this is how I see Munguia having a chance here. I just don't think that he will totally be able to thread the needle without getting blasted by Canelo Alvarez. Like, if Canelo hits Munguia with the same types of shots, I know Ryder is a southpaw, Canelo's orthodox, but if Canelo could land as flush as Ryder landed against Munguia, I just don't see any way that Munguia doesn't get hurt badly and dropped and maybe stopped, you know? Like, Derevianchenko is a decent puncher. I mean, I thought Derevianchenko had Triple G hurt a couple of times in their fight. I think Derevianchenko's, he is a real puncher. But again, Derevianchenko ain't Canelo Alvarez. I just don't see how Munguia, with his style and with his propensity to start pouring on offense, I don't see how he doesn't get clipped and hurt badly against Canelo. And you know what? I think that matchups wise, I was going to pick Canelo, but via decision, and I still might. I've been leaning there for most of the time I've been thinking about this fight. Canelo via decision, competitive fight, Canelo via decision. But I'm almost thinking that I think that what went into some of the decision making here was that Jaime Munguia is an undefeated fighter, an exciting fighter, and a vulnerable fighter because he is so offensive and sometimes lacks that defense. I feel like this might be set up to make Canelo look spectacular and for Canelo to get his first knockout or TKO victory since Caleb Plant in November of 2021. This would be Canelo's first knockout since that. And the more I really think about the style and the matchup here, I think that unlike Dimitri Bivol, Triple G in the trilogy fight, John Ryder and Jermell Charlo, Jaime Munguia might not make it the distance here. I actually think that Canelo is going to score a mid to late round stoppage of Jaime Munguia. I think some things will go well for Munguia, but again, I don't see how he threads the needle here. I think that he will be doing pretty well in the early rounds. He might get buzzed a little bit, but I think that he's going to be landing some clean shots on Canelo as well. But I think that in the middle rounds, there's going to be a time where Munguia starts pouring it on a little bit and Canelo starts backing Munguia up, where Canelo starts applying that intelligent pressure where he's not throwing a ton of punches, but he's got this psychological pressure where even without throwing a ton of punches, it's the nature of the threat, of the way that Canelo's coming forward and Canelo making every punch count. I think he's going to start walking Munguia down to where Munguia will feel like his back is against the wall. And usually when Munguia is like in a little bit of trouble, his tendency is to respond by launching a lot of firepower. And I think that that will be his undoing. When Canelo starts taking more control of the fight, going into the middle rounds, Munguia is going to do what he does best. Start letting his hands go, and he's going to catch the wrong punches from Canelo, and that's going to spell the beginning of the end for Jaime Munguia. So yeah, you know, I was thinking about going Canelo via decision. Even coming into this video, I'm actually going to pick Canelo Alvarez via, we'll say, 6th to 8th round stoppage over Jaime Munguia. So that's how I see this one. But let me know your thoughts on Canelo versus Munguia. Please let me know how frustrated or not frustrated you are about this matchup. I know a lot of people are, you know, rightfully saying, get over it. You know, Canelo's not fighting Benavidez, especially now that Benavidez is at 175. If Canelo wouldn't fight a 168 Benavidez, I damn sure don't see him going up to 175 to do it. So let me know your thoughts on how we got here, on the strength of this matchup. Should Canelo be a 5-1 favorite? Do you see Canelo with all the tread on the, you know, off the tires? Like, Canelo has fought how many fights? 64 fights now, and he's 33 years old, which on paper might not seem old, but again, with the amount of fighting that he's done throughout the years, he's an old 33. I know he still beats just about everybody he fights, but he's an old 33. Do you see Jaime Munguia having a real shot against Canelo? And if he does, how might he get it done, and who are you going with? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And also, if Canelo gets past Jaime Munguia, I heard that they made Edgar Berlanga the WBA mandatory. Now that David Morrell Jr. is going up to 175, all of a sudden the WBA is going to make Edgar Berlanga the mandatory when they never made David Morrell Jr. the mandatory. Like, what's up with that? You know, it's like David Morrell Jr. is even a PBC guy. So if Canelo's working with PBC, David Morrell, why not make him the mandatory? But you're going to slide Edgar Berlanga in there? I almost feel like Canelo and the sanctioning bodies are totally in cahoots, and they are working these things out collectively. I get that impression. I feel like with certain fighters, especially Canelo, the sanctioning bodies just stand down and more or less say, do what you want and we will work with you. That's how I see this. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the 168 landscape, how this fight is going to play out. And let's say Canelo wins. Where does he go and who does he fight from here? Let me know your thoughts. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.